Good afternoon. Today is a good day in the history of our community. Because of the hard work of many, pending legislative approval, the bills will be the Buffalo Bills through 2055. Yesterday was the finalization of nearly 2 years of negotiations in which 19 documents were finally agreed to. Documents that not only extend the current lease during the construction of a new stadium, but set the standard for the construction of the new stadium, how it's to be constructed, who's to pay for it, everything associated with it, including our community benefit agreement. There are 19 documents in total, and you can find them on the Erie County Department of Law website at erie.gov/law/buffalo-bills. These documents have been submitted to the legislature for its approval. They've said they would take approximately 30 days to review. The goal is to move the process forward such that once the legislature approves, construction can begin at the stadium. The schedule that we have anticipates construction to begin in May. Because we have now entered all these documents, the only thing that is required left is for the legislature to offer its approval of the documents. I want to thank Kim and Terry Pagula, as well as Governor Kathy Hochul and their teams, as well as my team here from the Erie County Department of Law and other departments that played an incredible role to get to the point where we have these documents that were agreed to yesterday and signed by all the parties yesterday. It took a little time to compile all the documents today, to have all the signature pages included, but what was submitted to the legislature at 4 o'clock is the complete package of documents as well as a bond resolution giving the county the authority to enter into the new Bills Stadium construction as well as an extension of the existing lease. The documents on this side here are documents related to an extension of the existing lease. This is everything associated with the new lease, which means these are all the construction documents, all the items that are necessary, including a 30-year lease between New York State and the Buffalo Bills. We've talked all about the major terms throughout the past year because, of course, it was approximately a year ago when the memorandum of agreement was entered into by New York State, Erie County, and the Buffalo Bills. But this pile of documents here, which was submitted to the legislature for its approval, are the documents that state that the Buffalo Bills will be staying here until 2055 at least, because it's a 30-year lease, assuming that the lease will go into effect with the 2026 season. So these documents, the ones that are listed on the website as amendments to the 2013 agreement, and there's multiple documents associated with that, including second amendments to the 2013 agreement, all pertain to the years in which we run the stadium, the county owns it, we lease it to the state leases it to the Bills under the current formula, through the opening of the new stadium. These documents here relate to the new stadium, including this biggest document, which is the construction coordination agreement. That's the stadium lease, excuse me. The bottom is the biggest document, which is the construction coordination agreement. This 200-page document spells out all the obligations, the rights, and responsibilities of the three parties as the stadium is constructed. Everything from the project labor agreement to the issues associated with MWB standards, including the funding schedule, when we each have to put money in, as well as the issues associated with the construction timeline. This is the most comprehensive document of all because it covers everything associated with the construction. Once the stadium is open, there then is a stadium lease between New York State and the Buffalo Bills. New York State is represented by the Erie County Stadium Corporation. A lot of this has been talked about in the past. But I think a lot of people were like, why is it taking so long? Why is it taking so long? These two documents alone are nearly 400 pages. This was one of the most complex deals I've ever worked on. And for those of you who don't know, before I was county executive, I was the county controller, and I would go do very sophisticated bond deals for Erie County. on Wall Street. And before that, I practiced finance law representing corporations and governments, truthfully, doing major transactions. This was, in some ways, the most complicated deal I've ever dealt with. So I want to thank all of the parties, including many of the people that are in our room right here today, for their tremendous work. Specifically, I want to note from Erie County, our county attorney, Jeremy Toth, and his team. Prior county attorney, Michael Saragusa, now a judge with the New York State Court of Claims, also put in a lot of work. I want to thank my chief of staff, Ben Swanekamp, for the work that he's done over these last months to get this deal done. And I also want to point out and thank my former chief of staff, Jennifer Hibbett, for the work that she did. I also want to thank our counsel from Greenberg Traurig, a national firm that is based out of Houston, for the tremendous work that they did. This, as I said, is one of the most complicated deals I've ever been involved with. When you talk about dotting I's and crossing T's, this is what you end up with. Hundreds and hundreds of pages of documents. But I think the most important thing to take from this is because of the work of so many for so long, Governor Hochul's team, the Pegula's team with the Buffalo Bills will be staying here, not only for the next few years during construction, but 30 years thereafter. So this lease secures them in our community until 2055. In 2013, we closed the last lease round negotiations. It was an extension for 10 years. During that time, 3 communities have lost their football teams. San Diego Chargers, that team went to Los Angeles. The St. Louis Rams, that team went to Los Angeles. And the Oakland Raiders, that team went to Las Vegas. As much as everybody would like to think the Bills were never moving, there was always a risk being a small market and larger markets that were interested in the team. So because of the tremendous work of so many, including from the Pegula's team, I can guarantee you that this team is staying here for the rest of my life, and everyone will be able to cheer on the Buffalo Bills for decades to come. This is a very complicated transaction. I am not going to be able to answer all the questions today. The legislature has given itself weeks to review this, a month, 30 days. We are hopeful they will be able to approve it with either at the 30-day timeline or immediately thereafter, because we want to start construction in mid to late May, and we need to have the legislature's approval to start construction. No construction can really begin until the legislature approves it. But these are very complicated documents, as you see. They're very big documents, 200, 167 pages, just 2 separate documents. And while I'm not going to be able to answer all of the particular questions with regards to every document, we will over the next few weeks be talking about this, be willing to answer the questions to the media. But for a long time now, people have been saying, when are you getting the Bills deal done? When are you getting the Bills deal done? It's done. The Bills deal is done. There's only one more step that is required, and that is the approval of the Erie County Legislature to effectuate it. A resolution was transmitted to the legislature at 4 o'clock today, which spells out their requirements for approval. So they got every one of these documents in signed form, signed by all the parties, myself, Mr. Pegula, the state's representatives, and now they have to approve it or reject it. They don't have the ability to review and try to change it. The documents are as. The legislature will either approve it or reject it. I feel very confident based on the conversations I had the legislature will approve it, but it's up to them to make that determination. They are a separate body of Erie County. So today's a very good day in the history of our community. Where other communities failed to keep their teams, we did. And we did it not only in a manner in which everyone is contributing, including the ownership. They are responsible for all cost overruns. As you may have heard, the expectation for this stadium estimate is now $1.54 billion. It has risen $140 million from the original estimate of $1.4 billion. That is all to be paid for by the team because they are responsible for cost overruns. We also have the strongest community benefit agreement that has ever been entered into by any community with an NFL team, bar none. No other community has come close to our community benefit agreement, which includes $100 million plus of investment from the Bills and the related organizations over the next 30 years, or the 30 years once the lease goes into effect. And in addition to every kind of other provision you can imagine, there's also living wage standards to ensure that everybody who's working at that stadium will be getting a living wage. So that goes from everyone, to the ticket takers, to the cleaners, to the concessionaires. We want to ensure that each and every one of the individuals who works at that stadium in the future gets a living wage, and we have that now because of the community benefit agreement. This took a long time to get to. I want to thank also from Erie County our Community Benefit Agreement negotiating team, specifically Chairwoman April Baskin, as well as the leaders of the Majority and Minority Caucus, Tim Myers and John Mills, as well as James Blackwell from our Department of EEO, who played a lot of integral roles with regards to the negotiations and ensuring that the MWBE standards are those that protect our residents. It's a great day. Once the legislature approves, there will be a groundbreaking at the stadium, hopefully in May, and the construction will begin. And then over the next 3 years, we will watch one of the largest projects this community has ever seen take hold. Think about it. We're talking about a $1.5 billion stadium. Thousands of workers will be employed on this. Money will go back into our community. As those workers are paid, they will spend it back into our community. And because of the project labor agreement we have, we guarantee that those workers will be local. And there's probably so much need, they're going to have to bring in workers from outside this area. So to all of the Bills fans out there who have been wondering when you were going to get the deal done, it's done. There was a lot of tough negotiations, but we have a fair deal that's good for the people of Erie County. It's good for Bills fans across the world. And I'm just very, very happy that we were able to reach this day. We knew we were going to get it done. It wasn't easy, but we did. And now Bills fans can just not focus on when's the stadium going to get done. Now they're going to focus on when's the stadium going to get completed. And hopefully, when are we going to win our first Super Bowl? So with that, I'll open it up to any questions.
Chances that the legislature, chances the legislature will not approve.
I will leave it up to the legislature and the legislators to say whether they are going to approve or not approve. The conversations I've had with them during the past weeks as we were getting closer to the end indicated to me they thought it was a fair deal, but you'd have to talk to each of the legislators individually to determine where they're going to go with this. As I said, it's such a complicated deal. It's going to take some time for them to review it, just like it's going to take everyone in the public time to review it. We wanted to make certain we had it available for the public to review the documents. These are documents, these are the final documents that you'll find on the website as prepared for execution. They actually do not include the signatures, but what was submitted to the legislature today does include the signatures. So you'll find every one of the documents is prepared for execution, and there's 19 of them. There's a lot. Not every single document has to be approved by the legislature, but the vast majority of them do. And I'm hopeful that they will approve it, and we'll get it done in approximately 30 days. Tara.
Why is the current stadium lease running through July 2028 if this new stadium is opening in 2026?
The goal with extending it to 2028 was to ensure that if there were delays in construction, we didn't have to renegotiate the documents. So the documents give us basically a 2-year window in case there are delays. The schedule of construction is to open it up by the game in 2026. However, we always know there's delays. And if there are delays, we wanted to protect ourselves so that we didn't run out of time. We wanted to ensure that no matter what, the extension would continue to 2028. We feel very confident that it'll open in 2026, but if there are delays and it doesn't open until 2027, it doesn't matter, we're covered.
Can you shed any light into what made this so complex? I mean, obviously, every single paper you have there has to be written, that you have to read through it and do all these things, but was the negotiation between the three parties, was there any moments where you had to sit there and kind of have back and forth?
Well, you always have back and forth in these types of negotiations. The question was, for those who may be watching live and didn't hear it, how did it take so long? Why we're here? Were there negotiations that went back and forth? I will note that there were a lot of issues that we dealt with in the last year that we didn't anticipate. I don't think any of us anticipated. We stopped basically from the county end and the state end negotiating when we dealt with the mass shooting because we had to respond to that. The Pagulas had to stop when it dealt with the issues associated with Kim Pagula. That took some time. And also there were specific terms that still need to be negotiated. We have a memorandum that was approved last year, but we still had to negotiate the project labor agreement, the collective bargaining agreement, the construction agreement. I mean, the largest agreement is the construction coordination agreement, and that says everything associated with construction. The MWBE guidelines, the service disabled vet guidelines, which are required under this. So it took a long time to get to these point where we could say the documents are done, we're all agreed to, and it's just, as I said last year when we announced the deal, this is not going to be, we're not going to finish this deal in the next 2 or 3 months. It's going to take some time. I didn't think it would take a year. But we also had a lot of intervening events between the mass shooting, the Kim's illness, the issues with the November storm, and then the blizzard, in which we had to focus on that. So our attorneys would be working behind the scenes, but the principals were like, I can't focus on this now. We got to focus on the blizzard, so that delayed things.
So how many documents in total?
There's 19 documents here, Harold. There's 6 of them, I believe, that are directly related to the extension of the current lease, and then there's 13 of them that are for the new lease. And they're all listed on the website. You can go through and find each document on the website. The biggest agreements really relate to the amendment and continuation of the existing lease, but they're not that thick. It's just continuing basically the terms of the existing lease. But the new lease, the new stadium lease, the new construction agreement, the collective bargaining agreement, and everything else that you see. I mean, the stadium security agreement. We have an amendment to the existing stadium security agreement for the current facility, and we have a new stadium security agreement for the new facility. The club had a guarantee. We had to get a guarantee from the Buffalo Bills because the actual lease is not between the state of New York and the Buffalo Bills. It's between the state of New York, the county of Erie, that's just a construction agreement, excuse me. The stadium lease is between Erie County Stadium Corporation and Bills Stadium and Events Company, LLC. The Bills have created a holding company for operating the stadium in the future. Because of that, we had to get a guarantee from the organization. If the stadium company, which was operating the lease, defaulted on it, that the Buffalo Bills would be there to back up any default payments. So very complicated agreements, and something that just is I don't want to say it's unlike any large deal I've done in the past, because that's not necessarily the case. This was in some ways one of the most complicated ones, but I've done SEC Reg D deals when I practiced law. I did lots of bond transactions, and there's always a ton of paperwork associated with this. This one, because we were amending the current lease and creating a new one where we were building a new stadium, had a lot of I's to dot, T's to cross. For anybody who's ever built a home, you know how you often have a construction loan and a construction agreement when you build a home, and then those end when the house is built and you get a mortgage, a permanent mortgage that takes out the construction loan. It's kind of like that, but even more complicated.
Can you speak a little bit more on this community benefits agreement? I know you gave a few specific details earlier. I think I saw there was a $3 million per year community investment. Is that correct?
Yes, on an annual basis, starting the first year, the Bills or their related entities, it can come from the Sabres too, it can come from Pagulas if they wanted to give it individually, which they might for tax purposes, are required in the first year to give donate $3 million, invest $3 million into our community, and then it grows on an annual basis by 2.2%. So the first year is basically it's $3 million. The second year is $3 million and 66,000, and so on and so on, and it grows. So over the life of the lease, the team will be investing more than $100 million into our community, which can go into all kinds of areas. It can go into affordable housing. It can go into mental health issues. It could go into buying book bags for students. I mean, there's all kinds of things that can be done. The one that's really interesting about the community benefit agreement is the community benefit agreement has a provision in it that creates a community benefit agreement committee, which is appointed by the county, the Bills, and New York State. And they make recommendations to the Bills on an annual basis where they should put their money. And then they review to see did the Bills put it in an appropriate mechanism. And then they make recommendations, or they tell the Bills, we don't think you did a good job, you should be putting it in here. So that will exist through the life of the lease. So what ends up happening is, rather than have a separate organization say, here's how the money's going to get spent, the Community Benefit Committee will hear from the community, will make recommendations to the Bills. The Bills will actually make the donations. It's their money. They will make the donations, but then we review how they did it. They have to tell us how they did it, give us a breakdown of the money associated with it. And if by chance we think, well, that's not the best use of the $3 million, plus as it grows, here's things that you should do to do a better job.
When do you expect this to be approved by the legislature, if they do?
I do expect it to get approved in early May. I think they're going to take 30 days. The question was, when do I expect it to get approved? I think the legislature will approve it after they've said they're going to have a 30-day period in which to review these documents. There are going to be hearings. Of course, the media and the public will be welcome to come and hear the presentation from the county and our council, as well as others, as to the specifics associated with the documents. We'll be answering questions from the legislature. I don't know when that's going to be scheduled. We just sent it to the legislature today. They will schedule those hearings, possibly over multiple days, because there's a lot of documents to talk about. And then they will go through their process and vote up or vote down, and I hope they vote up.
And if they're approved in, May-ish, what are we looking at for a groundbreaking?
Well, a groundbreaking date hasn't been set yet, but we're hoping to do groundbreaking in May.
With this community benefit agreement, you were saying it's one of the most, I don't know what your adjective was, but I'm gonna use robust community benefit agreements in the history of the NFL. Can you comment as to why it is this robust? Because $100 million over 30 years doesn't necessarily seem like a lot of money when we have a starting quarterback who makes has a 6-year deal of $258 million.
The question was with regards to the community benefit agreement. I will note at the same time, as we negotiate this community benefit agreement, the Tennessee Titans entered into a community benefit agreement with Nashville and the state of Tennessee where they guaranteed $6 million, and we have $100 million. The NFL generally does not enter into community benefit agreements. This is a first of its kind in many ways. We are getting a commitment of cash on an annual basis. We're getting other commitments with regards to the use of vendors at the stadium in the future, providing living wage for the people who work there. Very rarely do these pro athletes actually get paid what their contract is. They almost always get bought out. So for those who are talking about, well, comparing it to the contract of a pro athlete, to tell you the truth, the only time pro athletes actually ever get paid the full amount generally is when they get injured and they have to pay them. Often they don't get paid. They get their buyouts and things like that. We've already seen the contracts being restructured that the Bills wanted to restructure so that they could have room on the cap to bring in more people. So who knows what will happen with regards to their salaries, but I can tell you I know how much money we're going to get over the life of this long-term lease. And the other thing to remember that a lot of people may have forgot, the county will no longer own the new stadium. We'll transfer it to the state. The county will no longer be responsible to be putting in annual operating payments as well as annual capital contributions, which have been millions of dollars over the last few years. I think we're up to $6 million this year alone between operating and capital. That ends. We no longer will do that. So that's a great win just there. So I think this is in comparison to what exists in other NFL teams, it's a fantastic deal. It's the strongest deal ever. It's as simple as that. This is the strongest community benefit agreement any community has ever entered into with an NFL team. And it was really tough, a lot of hard negotiations. I was involved in every single one of them almost, and it was not something that was come too lightly, but I do want to thank the Pagulas for entering into this agreement. I also, once again, want to thank my community benefit negotiating team, starting with our county attorney, our outside counsel, and then Chairwoman Baskin and Majority and Minority Leader Mills for their tremendous work to hold and be steadfast that we were not going to give in. We needed to get a good agreement, and I want to thank Governor Hochul for supporting us in that measure too, because she could have said, no, we're done, but she wanted a strong community benefit agreement as well. I'm sure there's going to be lots more questions as time goes by. I don't expect everyone to be looking through all these documents today. They are very complicated. You're probably going to get bored most of the time reading these because there's really a lot of legalese. But if you have more questions, we'll be certainly glad to answer them as time goes by. We will be offering ourselves to local members of the media to discuss this in further at other dates. But we finished the negotiations actually yesterday morning. The documents were all set. They were sent out for signature. I actually posted on my Twitter page. You may have seen the picture of me signing all the documents. The signature pages were shared late last night. Everything was compiled and put together, and the resolution was finalized and prepared to send to the legislature, and we filed it at 4 o'clock today. Not bad, considering we basically finished this deal yesterday morning. Pretty good, and I want to thank my team for the great work that they did to get us in the situation where we are today. As I started with, this is a great day in the history of our community. When I became county executive, there was a serious concern whether we were going to be able to keep the Bills. A lot of people were wondering, could we keep the Bills? There's talk of the Toronto Bills, the London Bills. And we got through that deal back in 2012 and 13, and it wasn't easy. And I thank Mr. Wilson, the late Mr. Wilson and his team for all that they did to ensure that the Bills would stay in Buffalo through the ownership, next owner. And I certainly thank the Pagulas once again for not, they weren't easy negotiators, I'll say that. They had strong negotiators on their squad, but they also understood the importance of this community, the Bills to this community, and we have entered into a fair deal for all. Fair deal for New York State, fair deal for Erie County, fair deal for the Buffalo Bills. It's a legacy project we can all be proud of, because when I'm long gone, probably, because of the work that we did here today, the Buffalo Bills will still be the Buffalo Bills. And I want to thank everybody who played a role in it. It was a huge day, a day that was almost 2 years in the making from when we started the negotiations, a year since we announced the MOU. And it's just a really good day to be a Buffalo Bills fan. Thanks, everyone.